Pick a move in the ring. You can hit me with the words you fling.
What's happening, everybody? It's Nick Atkin from SCMP MMA, and I'm with John Hyun, and we are here to preview UFC Fight Night, Poirier versus Hooker. It's UFC Vegas 4, whatever you want to call it. A top-heavy card, but a very interesting main event, isn't it, John? Dustin Poirier against Dan the Hangman Hooker, a huge bout in the lightweight division.
Oh, definitely a huge bout. Probably one of the biggest fights next to the title fight coming up in, I think, September. So there's a lot of hype surrounding it, a lot of people interested in this matchup, and it's interesting on both sides, right? You got Dustin, who is coming off that title loss to Khabib. He's coming off a long layoff. He's coming off surgery. He's coming off, just contemplating retirement. There's so much going on surrounding Dustin Poirier, and this fight is a big test for him because he's facing an up-and-comer. You know what I mean? Hooker is an up-and-comer, but he's not an up-and-comer. The reason why I call him an up-and-comer because he's rising up the ranks, and what Dustin's job in this fight is to do is to put him back in his place. And a lot of people believe Dan Hooker has what it takes to take out Dustin Poirier. It's a very interesting fight. I actually spoke with Dan Hooker last week, and in his interview, he told me that the one factor that Dustin Poirier has in his favor is he has a lot of main event experience. Dan Hooker, he's just coming off his first main event where he went all 25 minutes against Paul Felder and edged out a split decision. And he said that is going to be valuable in this match coming up against Dustin Poirier. So I feel like he thinks that this fight is going to be going, into the fourth and fifth rounds, it seems like. But, Dan, you never know with him and Dustin. These guys are gunslingers. They're going to come and throw hard leather and see who's gonna fall first, right? It's almost like Dustin's boxing versus Dan Hooker's kickboxing. Which one will prevail? A lot of people have Dustin holding a little bit more volume punching, and I don't know about the power, though, to be honest with you, because when you watch Dan Hooker, when he lands flush, he puts people out like a light. Dustin, not so much. He's more of a guy that will throw volume but still has a lot of power in his punches, and he's getting stronger and stronger. It's a big toss-up in this fight. I don't know exactly where I'll put all my eggs in one basket or not, because it's just so close. What's the odds? Do you know the odds on this fight?
Bring it back on screen here. According to Tapology, slight underdog is Dan Hooker plus 165. I'm not entirely sure what those odds mean. I'm not very good at gambling. You might be able to make more sense of it than me. But
yeah, I'm not a big gambler, but when it says slight underdog, that means if you put money down, you get more money back.
Nice.
And in my eyes, if this fight is not in my eyes, but in everybody's eyes, this fight's very close. And I would actually take the underdog in this one because, like I said, you get more money back if you win as the underdog, and it's a very close fight. Dan seems like he's hungry. He's been training the whole time. I don't know about Dustin. Dustin, he has been training at American Top Team. But before the pandemic, I don't know exactly what his situation was because he was coming off an injury. Like I said earlier, he's coming off that contemplating retirement, and it's never a good sign when a fighter loses and decides that they might retire, and then they come back and fight one of the top contenders in the division. It's an interesting dynamic there, but if anybody can do it, Dustin can. So, but if I was betting, I would bet on Dan Hooker.
Okay. Anyone who wants to bet on a fight, you heard it here first from John. That's his prediction. But there's huge ramifications, aren't there, depending on who wins this fight at the top of that division?
Definitely. If Dustin wins, he just solidifies his position as a top 5 fighter. I think that if he does defeat Hooker, or even if Hooker wins, I think Tony Ferguson is going to be the fight that the winner faces. Even if it's Poirier or Hooker, both of these guys probably won't get a title shot because you always have Conor, even though he's retired, but they haven't taken him out the rankings yet, which means he's not really retired. And if they do have this fight, Khabib versus Gaethje in September, the winner will probably face Conor. That's probably destined. That's probably written already in the history books. It just has to happen. And these two guys that are facing off this weekend, Poirier and Hooker, they're probably going to fight Ferguson or another contender that's coming up, but most likely Ferguson. So, but if they beat Ferguson, then that lines them up for the title shot early 2021, which will be very exciting to watch too. Because if Ferguson wins, I feel like that catapults him up to the title shot again. And if Khabib is still holding that title in early 2021, very exciting. We might actually get that fight.
Don't tease us, John, with that again. No. Dan Hooker, this is a big moment for him, isn't it? Because I guess some people perceive him as just slightly below that top echelon of lightweights. If he wins this fight, that really solidifies him as well, doesn't it, in that elite group?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, their perception of Dan Hooker is that he's a very, very good fighter, but is he a top 5 fighter? They don't know. They don't know yet. They haven't, because his last fight against Felder, it was so close that a lot of people thought that Felder won that fight. So there's a lot of doubt in people's minds about Hooker. But if he goes out there in this fight and let's say he knocks out Poirier by the second round, then there is no more doubt in people's minds. Dan Hooker becomes a bona fide title contender, even though he probably won't get a title shot right away.
Well, let's move on down the card then. I'm going to bring this back up. Okay, co-main event, Mickey Gall against Mike Perry. Interesting one, isn't it?
It is an interesting matchup. The reason why it's interesting is because why are they matched up against each other? It doesn't, a lot of people are talking about, does the matchup make sense? You know what I mean? When they talk about fights coming up, and this one really doesn't make sense, but it makes sense. The reason why is because Mickey Gall, he is a guy that somewhat has a name. He's like right outside the rankings. He's very inconsistent, but he has some decent wins, okay? And he has a decent skill set. And then you got Mike Perry, who is a guy that is very famous for a myriad of different things, but he does have that knockout power. And it's Mike Perry's knockout power versus Mickey Gall's ground game. And going into this fight, a lot of people would think, Mike Perry, he's faced off against much higher caliber, opposition. He should be the favorite, and he probably is the favorite. But if Mickey Gall goes in there and plays or goes in there with the smart game plan and implements that game plan, which is going in there, taking Mike Perry down and submitting him, then I feel like Mickey Gall could win this fight. And because once you get to the ground and you put Mike Perry on his back, he can't knock you out. So you pretty much nullify any chance of Mike Perry winning. So if Mickey Gall is smart, he'll go in there, grab a single leg, double leg, push Mike Perry against the fence, maybe even pull guard and see what it can happen on the ground. So before you ask me, I'm gonna go with Mickey Gall in this fight. I'm gonna go with the underdog, 2 underdogs in a row, right? I'm gonna go with it because Mike Perry, he's fun to watch, but he's not the smartest fighter. His fight IQ is not at the highest level. And if Mickey Gall can show another layer of himself in this fight and show that he can go in there, implement a good game plan, and stay away from the power of Mike Perry, he could win this pretty easily. I could see him tapping out Mike Perry.
Obviously, Mike Perry's a lot of fun on the internet, isn't he? But the reality is he was obliterated, wasn't he, by Jeff Neal last time out.
Mm-hmm.
Lost tough decision, I think, with Vicente Luque. But this is a big fight for Mike Perry, isn't it?
It is a big fight. It almost shows us that if it will show us if Mike Perry is actually trying to be an elite fighter or not, because if you've been watching Mike Perry, he has a new girlfriend, and he has come out and said that he's not going to have any coaches. His coach in his corner will be his girlfriend, his new girlfriend, not his old girlfriend. We know his old girlfriend, the blonde. Now he has a new girlfriend, the brunette, and she's basically his coach. He said he doesn't need any coaching. He got her. And I'm very interested to see what she's going to say in the corner. You know, and right now there's a lot of focus on the corners and what they say to the fighters. I'm waiting for her and their interactions. I think it's going to be comedy gold we're going to see this weekend in that corner with the mics.
Okay, well, let's move down the card again. We've got Brendan Allen against Kyle Dorcau. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Who have you got in this one, John?
I'm going to go with Brendan Allen in this fight. He's shown that he is UFC caliber. He's coming off that great performance on the Contender Series, got the contract, came in and choked out Kevin Holland, who was a decent prospect at this weight class. And then he went into taking on Tom Breeze, who was a highly touted European prospect, took him out in the first round, ground and pound. And then he was supposed to fight Ian Heinisch in this fight coming up, but Ian Heinisch got injured, I think maybe a week ago or two, a week and a half ago. And then now Kyle Dorcau is coming up, filling in late notice, undefeated, highly touted prospect. And but I feel like it's just too short notice for the kid. And what is it? Brendan Allen, he's just too experienced, and he's going to go in there and basically do the same thing, which is press him against the fence, you know, whine or grind on him, and then take him to the ground and finish the fight. I see it probably going down in the first or second round. That's what Brendan Allen usually does. I was hoping that Ian Heinisch would fight him, because that would be actually a good test, but that's not happening. To get this kid, Kyle Dorcau. Kyle Dorcau, he's just a undefeated prospect coming in. He's been the guy that they've been talking about for the last year or so, appearing on the Contender Series, but he's got the call up right away instead of going through the Contender Series, and we'll see what he got, man. I'll be very surprised if he goes in there and dominates Brendan Allen, but who knows? We've seen weirder things in the cage.
Well, what about this one? Maurice Greene against John Volante.
This is a weird one too, because John Volante is going up to heavyweight for the first time in the UFC, and after a roller coaster stint at light heavyweight, John Volante, he's actually he has a wrestling background, but he doesn't wrestle. He just brawls, and very entertaining for the fans, but not for your record. And now he's going to move up to heavyweight, where he doesn't really cut weight. And I wonder how that's going to have an effect on his discipline. Like when you train, like nutrition and your diet is a big part of recovery and fueling yourself. But if you don't have to like cut the weight and lose the weight, what does his diet look like? Is he still following that protocol? Well, I'm interested to know about that. And then also training under these circumstances, because he is from New York, right? He trains in New York, and New York was hit the most by the coronavirus. So has he been getting the proper training for this camp? And on top of that, like I mentioned, he's moving up to heavyweight, which is not good. And he's moving up against Maurice Greene, who is a monster. You know what I mean? Like, I'm saying monster as in like he is one of the biggest heavyweights out there. He's 6'7", right? And he's probably walking around very close to 265 pounds. I actually interviewed him a couple weeks back, for this upcoming up fight. And he was telling me that he just moved his camp to Jackson Wink. So he's down there training with Juan Adams, former UFC heavyweight. And what's different about his camp is that in his former training camps, he would have training with like a bunch of different weight classes, but this group that he has at Jackson Wink is all heavyweights, right, or light heavyweights, and it's been different for him, and he also has Mike Winklejohn and Greg Jackson game planning for him and doing everything that he needs on the coaching side. And he feels great. He feels great going into this fight. And he also basically has his back against the wall because he's coming off 2 losses in a row, and both fights he was finished. So if he loses this to a light heavyweight, which I don't know, what does that say about Maurice Greene? You know what I mean? Is he still UFC caliber? It's tough to say. So it's a big fight for both guys. But if I had to choose, I'll take Maurice Greene. I'm always going to take the heavyweight over the light heavyweight, especially when Maurice Greene has Greg Jackson and Mike Wicklejohn in his corner, and he just seems like he's motivated differently going into this fight. So I'm going to choose him. But John Volante, you never know, man. That guy's a slugger, so he might just go in there and just throw bombs for the first round, and maybe it might land and knock out Maurice Greene. But I highly doubt it. The dude's 6'7".
Well, we were set to have this card get kicked off, I think, or rounded out at least by Aspen Ladd against Sarah McMahon, but Aspen Ladd is going to be on the sidelines for a while after tearing her ACL and MCL, I think it was. That could be 9 months maybe. So I'm not sure yet which fight is going to be bumped up, but taking a look at these prelims, John, which one would you think would best fill in for that?
I would put Jinyu Frey versus Kay Hansen. I would put them on the main card. Both fighters are probably two of the best atom weights in the world, or straw weights. And Jinyu Frey, she's going up to straw weight, and she was the champion at atom weight for Invicta. And Kay Hansen is I think she's the youngest female fighter on the UFC roster now. She's 20 years old, and she's been fighting in Invicta for the last couple of years, and she's proven that she's top caliber. But I don't know if this matchup is favorable for her, because she's facing a Jin who is so experienced. She's fought the best of the best in the world at atom weight for the last 3, 4, 5 years, and this might be a bump up in competition for Kay Hansen. Is she ready or not? Who knows? But this is a big fight for both of them. The reason why is both of them just got signed to the UFC, and then they pit them against each other. I feel like put them on the main card as the opening fight and see what happens. Put them in, give them some shine. I mean, the ladies need some shine. You took out one woman's fight, you might as well replace it with another woman's fight.
Why not? Yeah. A couple of other good fights there, aren't there? Tanner Bosa, Felipe Lins. Should be fun at heavyweight. Anything else catch your eye?
Luis Pena versus Kamaru is going to be a fun fight to watch too. Both these guys bring it. Kamaru coming off that crazy debut where he knocked out Devon Smith, which nobody expected, but he did it. He came in on short notice. Luis Pena is a guy that was on The Ultimate Fighter and has a decent record, but nothing like spectacular. And I feel like this is the fight that maybe could put him on the map somewhat. And Kamaru could be the opponent that brings the best out of him. But also Kamaru is a guy that can come in and spoil the party. And that's what he likes to do. So we'll see what happens in this fight. It's going to be fun to watch this one. I think it'll most likely go all 3 rounds. But if it does go all 3 rounds, I kind of give it more to Pena. But if it finishes early, I see Worthy coming out on top, finishing Pena with maybe by knockout. But if it's a decision, I see Pena kind of edging it out.
All right. Well, I guess that we'll leave it there for now. Should be a fun card, right? I think there have been a couple of cards that didn't really catch the wider public's imagination, but I feel like this one is getting a bit of traction already just with that main event, right? Dustin Poirier's a pretty big name, obviously coming off that loss to Khabib.
Yeah, if you notice, the media has been covering this fight more than, compared to last week's main event, Curtis Blades versus Alexander Volkov. Not much media for that main event, right? And this one coming up is just everywhere. You see all the major publications interviewing these guys, and a lot of stories on, what did Hooker say and what did Poirier say, and do they respect each other, or who's got the advantage here, who's got the disadvantage there. Yeah, there's a lot of talk, and I don't think it's gonna disappoint. It's almost like it's gonna be like the Josh Emmett Shane Burgos fight. A lot of people I was hyped about it. You loved the matchup. Everybody loved the matchup, and when it actually went down, it was exciting. It was a 3-round banger of a fight, and I think that this fight, Hooker versus Poirier, is going to be the same. We might see something we'll never expect. Who knows? Maybe there will be a submission or something.
Yeah, it feels like maybe since the Ferguson Gaethje fight, UFC 249, things have been a little bit flat with the UFC, but with the odd exception of some great fights we've seen. But I think now this card, or this main event, may really set them up for a good month in July as well, because then we've got UFC 251, which is absolutely stacked, isn't it, on Fight Island, and there's a lot of good fights going to happen in Abu Dhabi. Seems like business is about to pick up again with the UFC.
Yeah, this is going to be a great main event to lead into that massive Fight Island card at 251. I can't wait, but I can't wait to see even Mickey Gall face off against Mike Perry, because Mike Perry always brings that unexpected improv craziness that he brings, and I just want to see what he does and how Mickey Gall reacts, because Mickey Gall's not a guy to kind of like brush things off too easily either. So you might see some like physical contact during the face-offs, which will probably hype up the card even a little bit, even more. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, other than that, the other matchups are kind of, just up and comers, right?
Sure. Well, I'll be watching, you'll be watching, and I'm sure we'll be breaking it down on Sunday together, hopefully with Chris EB, Mr. Edwards Bailey, if he's back. He was going to join us today, but he's been viewing apartments. Clearly more important than talking about fights with John and myself. Anyway, thanks, John, for making it. Very informative, as always. And yeah, everybody go check out John's interview with Dan Hooker. Great place to start with this fight week. You can find him on JHK MMA everywhere on social media. But yeah, guys, well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all again after a while. Cheers.
Hey guys, Sasha Platnikoff here, letting you know to tune in to SCMP Post Fight for all your weekly martial arts news.